Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Inuyashiki episodes 9 through 11, the final 3 episodes. So, just a couple days ago, we did the final 3 episodes of Steins Gate Zero, and now we're doing it for Inuyashiki. And I was not initially going to do this. I was just probably going to do 1 episode today, originally. But then I thought about how next week I won't be doing anything, so, as you know, I said I was going to do 2 episodes today. But then I found out that there's only 3 episodes left, and it's like, you'd have to wait 2 weeks after today for the last episode, and it's just like, at that point, let's just do all 3. That way, in 2 weeks, since next week I'll be at Youmacon, in 2 weeks we can start K-On! Season 2, which, as you know, is the next Friday anime series. So yeah, I think that's what we're going to do, finish off on this series, and I kind of have mixed thoughts on doing so, because the series is fantastic and I don't want it to end. But at the same time, I want to see how it ends so badly. As you know, I've had my theories and my thoughts on all of that, and one of the big things about it was that I was initially thinking that one of them was going to have to kill each other. And then my thoughts shifted to that maybe it could end without either of them dying. And now I just don't even know. Because last we saw, after the attack on Hiro's girlfriend's house and everything, and her grandmother were almost killed. The only reason they're alive now is because he saved them. He went nuts and he massacred all these cops at this police station. And it was, obviously terrifying. And all this stuff that he's done was terrifying. And as I said last time, it's also tragic because he's shown the will to change. He's wanted to change twice now, but each time it's been taken away from him by people who have hurt his loved ones. First, his mother being driven to suicide, which, again, partially, in fact, mostly his fault. And he does not realize this, but it is. But then you also have to take into account that the media and people online and stuff were apparently harassing her as well. So there is that too. But then you have his new girlfriend, who he straight up said that he loves. And he was not only willing to stop killing for her, but he actually started healing people. He turned himself around to an amazing degree for her. And then when she and her grandmother, who he also had learned to love, were almost killed, it sent him into a rage again. And I think that's the big thing with Hiro as a villain. He is a character who does not necessarily understand the difference between good and evil. He doesn't understand that all these killings he's doing are wrong. He has this sociopathic viewpoint to believe that because he has these abilities, has almost a right to take these lives. And then he also believes that he has a right to avenge his loved ones. And that taking lives in order to do so is justice. Which it isn't, by the way. I do not believe in that at all. I've heard people say, oh, if some asshole raped my daughter, I'd kill him. And it's I get why. Believe me, rape is one of the most disgusting things I can even think of. But I do not think, one, that killing will actually solve anything. I think that actually life in prison, with no chance of parole, no chance of getting out at all, and no special good treatment. I hate that a lot of prisons give their prisoners good treatment. I think that should be the punishment. I think that they should be fed just enough to be kept alive, and it shouldn't be good. By the way, sorry if you hear the Facebook notifications. I need to keep that up right now. I'm waiting for a message and everything. But prisoners should be fed just enough to be kept alive, and they should be treated very harshly, be forced to do very strenuous, hard work. They should not... I'm one of those people who do not believe prisoners should have access to technology of any kind, which means that there should not be a rec room in a prison. They should not have access to books or any kind of leisure activity. Nothing like that. I'm sorry, I know that might be a little an unpopular opinion, but I do not believe that prisoners should have that access, because they are prisoners. They should be, like, completely void of all of that. They shouldn't even be allowed to know what's going on in the outside world. I'm sorry, especially the worse their crimes. Now, if they're in prison for, like, a very minor crime, then maybe a little leniency. But if you have, like, some kind of serial killer, no. They should get nothing. Either way, that's not the point. The point I'm making is that would be a much better crime than killing someone. Killing someone as basically revenge for something that they did to you or a loved one, it doesn't solve anything. Vengeance is never the answer. I don't care what anyone says. It is never the answer. It is never right. The death penalty is extremely immoral. I'm sorry, but it's not even a question. It's not even a debate. There's some things that just straight up are or are not right. And that's one of them. And again, I'm not saying that their actions aren't... I'm not even saying they're not deserving of death. A serial killer who, like let's say, murders dozens of kids and stuff, yeah, oh yeah, they are definitely deserving of death. But giving them that won't solve anything, and it won't teach them a lesson. If they're put in prison for life with really, like, poor treatment is the wrong way to put it, but if they're treated like prisoners, like they should be, especially if they are like some kind of murderer who has killed dozens of children, again, just as a random example, but that would actually do more to deter the prisoners. A lot of people aren't as afraid of prison as they should be, because they know that prisoners are treated way too well. Way too well. Like, the fact that prisoners even have cots is too much. Prisoners should be forced to sleep on the floor. On the cold, hard floor, no blankets, no pillows. I don't give a shit. If they are prisoners, if they are in prison for a very good reason, they should not get any kind of basically compensation for it. It's like a lot of these prisons will have like these nice, comfortable cots. They'll give them like some good food stuff. And it's just like, they get rec rooms and stuff. They get time to just hang out. No, that's bullshit. I'm sorry, but no. Either way, I could rant about that forever. Again, the point I'm trying to make is that, is with all of this, going back to the main point, is that vengeance is never the answer. And, I really need to move on, because otherwise I'll start rambling about that again. But yeah, I definitely think Hiro is in the wrong here. But I understand why he's doing this stuff at the same time. And I like that for a villain. I like a villain who you can sympathize with, but also completely acknowledge his evil. A villain like Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn, you definitely sympathize with her. You feel sorry for what the Joker does to her. The fact that he basically, in a way, brainwashed her into this life of crime. The abuse she suffers. But at the same time, you cannot deny that what she's doing is evil. That the act she commits, arson, attacking people, theft, widespread destruction of property, it's all very bad stuff. And in some cases, in some comics and stuff, even murder. Harley Quinn is not a good person, but that doesn't mean she's 100% evil. I don't believe anyone is 100% evil. I believe that that things that people can do are 100% evil. I believe that ideologies can be 100% evil. But people themselves are never 100% evil. Even people I just outright despise and think are some of the most horrible people to ever exist, I would not say are 100% evil. If anyone, if they experience love, like true, legitimate love, they're not 100% evil. If they legitimately are trying to help people, even if their help is extremely unhelpful and destructive and horrifying and stuff, if they legitimately have a desire to help people, though, even if it's completely misguided in its execution, they can't be 100% evil. So I don't think anybody is, and I mean, it doesn't have to be as gray as like with Hero here, but still. The point is, I just really like what they're doing with his character. Now, Inuyashiki himself, the main hero of the story, has not been as much of a driving force to this series as I would have thought. He's actually, I kind of hate to say it, a supporting character. The main character of the series of Inuyashiki is not Inuyashiki himself. It's Hiro. Most of the story centers around him. Inuyashiki is there basically as a way to show the opposite side of gaining that kind of power. Inuyashiki is there to show that not all power is bad, and that it's basically there to show you that the old idea of ultimate power corrupts ultimately is false. And I like that because that's true. Ultimate power is not necessarily wrong. It's not necessarily ultimately corrupting. There are plenty of people in power who are good people and not corrupt at all. Whether they're celebrities, business tycoons, etc., etc. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily 100% innocent of everything that they're ever accused of or whatnot. But the adage, ultimate power corrupts ultimately, is basically saying that with ultimate power, you're instantly and ultimately corrupted. Not just generally corrupted, ultimately corrupted. That's what it's saying. And that basically means it's like the worst kind of corruption. You know, like our current administration. But I'm not going to get into that here. But I had to. But the problem with that is that that's not always true. Even yes, a lot of people are corrupted by power. A good number of people are. I'd even say almost, probably most. But not everyone is. And to just use that as a blanket expression doesn't work. Inuyashiki in this series is evidence of that adage being wrong. He gained this ultimate power. He basically cannot be killed except possibly by someone else with the power. And he can give life. He can cure any disease. He has extraordinary weapons. He's basically, I mean, in some ways, he's better than Superman. Like, I don't know for sure, because I don't know all the comics and everything, but I don't think Superman, at least not that I've ever heard of, could heal cancer. Like, I've never heard of that. So, it's just really interesting to me. He kind of represents how power can be used for good. And Hero represents how it can be used for evil. But both of them are not as black and white as they seem. There's been kind of a little bit of hints that maybe Inuyashiki might end up going a little too far. He's been training in his weapons and everything, and it's kind of giving this hint that maybe he's going to end up going too far at some point and regretting his actions. Which could very well be in fitting in with his character and with the story. And we see that Hero is not completely evil. That he has a heart and that he does love people, and that he can turn around if he's given enough of a reason to, if people show him that they want him to. But either way, I've been talking about this long enough. We have 3 more episodes today, and we're going to see where this ends. How are Hero and Inuyashiki's stories going to come to a close? Is one of them, or even both of them, going to die? Are they going to both survive? Will Hero accept going to prison? What is going to happen? We have no clue. But I'm excited to find out. Oh, excuse me, that came out of nowhere. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. The episodes. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we will begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so I actually took a little bit after the reaction before I got to recording this, mainly because I actually had to go somewhere. I thought I would have enough time to record my afterthoughts as well, but I didn't, so I had to leave. I'm back now. It's, I don't know, like a little over an hour later. Maybe like an hour and a half. Hour and a half at most. But either way, it gave me some time to think about this finale as well. And it really gave me some time to really get perspective, you could say. To really, like, figure out exactly how I felt about how the series ended. Because, to be honest, after the reaction and everything, a lot of it was based insanely on hype. There was a lot that I was thinking about regarding it, and it was mostly just hype speaking. But I feel I can actually give a legitimate viewpoint now that I've taken some time. And, I mean, it's not like super different from what my hype was, which, I mean, clearly that's telling you it's a good thing. But, yeah, it's just, this is definitely something that I needed time to really dissect in my own mind. So, in this finale, Hero began an even greater assault, planning to take out all of Japan. Just Japan, because in his eyes, Japan was his enemy. Because of their actions basically against him and his loved ones. So he saw all of Japan as his enemy, except, of course, his loved ones themselves, and planned to kill them all. He started the first day 100 people in the Shinjuku area. The second day he was planning on killing 1,000 people, and he was planning on doing so by taking out all of these airplanes. Like, all of the airplanes. Just all of the airplanes. Inuyashiki managed to save, I think they said it was like 30 or so of them. But either way, he saved a good amount of them. I'd say most of them. And because of it, he did end up having a confrontation with Hiro. Now, before this, though, Mari was caught in a building that was crashed into. There was a lot of smoke coming up to her floor because of it. They couldn't escape. They couldn't break the windows to get out. Everyone was freaking out, and Inuyashiki was trying to get to her, but he kept being stopped by Hiro, and yeah, it was like insane. So when he eventually does stop Hiro, mostly he stops him while unconscious. He manages to get to where Mari is and finds that she's dead. But somehow, I mean, his powers are so godlike, he can bring her back from the dead. He brings Mari back from death. Like, it's very clear. They made it very clear she was dead. Like, the eyes being open, the expressionless face, everything told us that she wasn't just, like, passed out or anything. She wasn't just, like, completely out of it. She was dead. But his powers changed that. And so he not only saved her, he saved her friend and everyone else there. And he went around the entire night saving everyone who had been killed by Hiro during these attacks. Hiro wakes up and he starts to come to a realization. He had already realized up to that point that he was the villain, which is something that he did not realize before. I had said this in the past plenty of times, but he didn't understand that what he was doing was wrong. But after Inuyashiki opened his mind to it, it got him angry at first, and hence why he was attacking Inuyashiki. But after being defeated and everything, I guess he... Ignore the dog. But after having been beaten and everything, his mind became a little more clear about it all. And he started thinking about it and realizing, yeah, he was the villain. And he started thinking about how it was affecting all the people he loved. His girlfriend and her grandmother. The mother who committed suicide. His father and his father's family. And you could tell it was breaking his heart to come to that realization. And so even though he could continue doing what he had been doing, well, to some degree, I'm sure, because he was pretty badly beaten up. He had no arms. The back of his head was missing. But he could probably still do something at that point. But either way, it's just like... He chose to, once again, to change. And in the end, he helped save the world. And he showed this kind of potential before, when he was helping save people thanks to his girlfriend's influence. And I think that I've kind of said it before, but this is probably the best thing about this series, amongst everything else that is phenomenal. It humanizes the villain to such a degree that you not only feel bad for him, but in the end, you're actually kind of on his side a bit. Now, you don't agree with all the horrible shit he did, not by any means, like not even to the slightest bit, but you're on his side that you understand him. You're on his side that when he chooses to sacrifice himself for humanity, you feel for him. But it wasn't enough. His final sacrifice wasn't enough. It required both of them. And Inuyashiki had to sacrifice himself as well. And this goes back to what I had been saying. Even in my pre-thoughts I mentioned this, that my initial theory on how this was going to end was that they were both going to have to kill each other. That because of their power, there is no other way. And my mind changed on that, but I wasn't that far off. The situation was definitely different. I mean, I didn't anticipate the meteor or the asteroid and everything. But in the end, they both had to die. One of them alone was not powerful enough to take out that asteroid. Both of them, yeah. And it's kind of amazing. The world not only lost one of its greatest heroes in Inuyashiki, but they lost one of the greatest redemption stories ever written. I'm getting emotional thinking about it again, and it's been, again, like, probably an hour and a half at this point, since I think over an hour and a half at this point, either way, however long it's been. And I'm still getting emotional about it, because when I say that, I'm serious. I've mentioned before, in many cases, I love redemption stories. I love it when a villain, no matter how horrible they are, can turn to good. And especially when it ends with self-sacrifice. And not just because I want to see the villain die or anything, but because of what self-sacrifice means. I've mentioned it many times before, and I'm going to mention it again here. So sorry if you're sick of me talking about it. I'm going to keep doing so because it's that important to me. In my eyes, there is no greater act of love than self-sacrifice. To be willing to sacrifice your life, or even something as silly as your health or your just general well-being. I shouldn't say silly, but as minor in comparison. To sacrifice for someone else to that kind of degree is an act of love. The greatest act of love. And to sacrifice your life is even more so. Hiro said, when he was going to do this, he told Inuyashiki that he was doing this because there are people he loves. There are people down there he wants to keep alive, to stay protected and safe. And you know he meant it. This is a guy who, it was basically said that he was sociopathic. Even as a child, he had these issues. That he didn't seem to understand the value of human life outside of that small circle of people that he personally cared about. If they weren't someone that he had that love towards, he didn't care. They meant nothing to him. When he got these powers, he felt like a god amongst ants. And that their lives, he had every right to them. Because he was basically a higher being in his eyes. His mother showed displeasure in the idea that he could even be like that. And so he made the conscious choice to stop. But when she was driven to suicide because of not only his actions, but yes, even the actions of others, he lost that reason to stop. Basically, his mother's words and the desire to please her and to not see her cry was his driving force. for doing good. And when that was taken away from him, it hurt him to such a degree that he lost that sense of purpose and began going back to that killing. But then he found the girl. Her and her grandmother showed him love that he hadn't known since his mother. And he not only agreed to stop killing, he started healing people. He started saving lives. But then the police raided. They killed his girlfriend and grandmother. And at this point, I'm thinking they were actually dead. We know Inuyashiki can bring back the dead, so why is it hard to believe that he could? I think they were actually dead. His girlfriend, the girl he loved more than anyone at that point, and her grandmother were killed by these people. He saved them and went off declaring war on the country for it. Because he felt such pain seeing someone he loved get hurt. He always had this good inside him. He did. And again, I'm not by any means excusing his actions. Not at all. But he did have this good inside him. He just needed someone to help him bring it out. But every time that happened, someone else took it away. In the end, it was Inuyashiki helping him realize what he had become. Through a term he knows. Like, he's a manga reader. He knows what it means to be a hero or a villain. So when he came to the realization that he was the villain this entire time, how would you feel finding that out? Finding out everything you had done up to that point was evil. He went crazy. He attacked Inuyashiki because he was scared, because he was in pain, having come to realize what he had done. And then excuse me, I got distracted by something. And then afterwards, he had one more chance. He was given one last chance, and he used it to save the people he loved. And then there's Inuyashiki himself, a down-on-his-luck older man who has 2 teenage children who don't really seem to care much for him, and a wife who's kind of dismissive. His life isn't going great. He finds out he's got this horrifying illness. Everything seems to be going downhill for him. Even when he finds a dog that he can show love and affection to, and who shows love and affection to him back, his family just shows hatred towards it. Or at least just dismissiveness. He's a man on the brink of just the most horrifying of depression. And he gains this power that at first it scares him. He doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't know what it is. But he soon realizes he can use it to help people. That, yes, he's a robot. He's a machine. But he can use it to save people, to protect people. And he does everything in his power to do so. And we don't see a lot of him. We don't see a lot of his exploits. He starts training in his weaponry, but only to be able to combat Hero, to save people. The rest of the time, he's going out there to hospitals and saving lives, curing illnesses, even cancer. And I think that's why we don't see a lot of him throughout the series. Because he's doing one thing. He has one, simple task in his life to help people. And it would have been cool to see him do more of that, sure. I acknowledge that. It would have been cool to see him doing more. But the series revolved around Hiro because Hiro's story was what this was truly about. This wasn't the story of an old man getting a second chance at life and using it to help others. That was the B plot. Let's be honest here. The A plot, the main focus of the series, was the story of a kid learning to love, having it taken away, and having to deal with his actions in the end. A kid who makes not just mistakes, but enacts evil, actions. And has to, in the end, come to realize that he's the villain of it all. That his actions make him the Blackbeards and Don Crocodiles of the real world. To go to the One Piece examples, because One Piece was something we know he specifically was into. And it's more his story than Inuyashiki's. Which I think is... I like the way they did that. I like the way that this series is named after Ichiro Inuyashiki, the old man. I like how the series starts off focusing on him, and we think that throughout the entire show he's going to be the main character, but instead it flips things on its head and focuses more on the villain. It surpasses, or not surpasses, it goes against all of our expectations. And it gives us a series that is a lot more in-depth and a lot more emotional because of it. And we still get to see plenty of Inuyashiki. And in the last 4 episodes, we even get more with his family. And have his family start to come back together. His daughter even gets published in Shonen Jump. That's huge for an aspiring manga artist. His son continues to show issue and even jealousy over his father. His wife, she thinks back to their honeymoon. And she reminds Inuyashiki of his humanity. Of the fact that despite him being this machine, he's just as much, if not more, human than he's ever been. It's as he himself said to Hiro. He never feels more alive than when he's saving lives. The greatest thing a person can do is to save someone at the cost of themselves. Whether it's the cost of something as menial as time or something as great as their own lives. This series embodies that. It embodies the ideal of self-sacrifice, not just because of the end. Not just because both Hiro and Inuyashiki gave up their lives to save the Earth. But throughout the entire series, we see Inuyashiki put himself at risk, even though he's not at any actual risk. He puts himself at risk to help people. When Hiro, before the apartment, his girlfriend and her grandmother's apartment is raided, you know what he's doing? He's putting himself at risk to make his girlfriend laugh. He's flying her around above the city. And he's a smart kid. I'm sure he knew that they would spot him. But in that moment, he didn't care. All he cared about was seeing his girl happy. He was sacrificing his own safety. And to be fair, it was extremely stupid to do, and he also was sacrificing the safety of his girlfriend and her grandmother, which, I mean, we know where that went, but yeah, it's just self-sacrifice has been in this series this entire time. So the question is up there then. I had time to think about all of this after having watched it. And so I talked about how I knew this is one of my favorite anime, but I wasn't sure where I would place it. And so I look at my list. I have a list published on Facebook of all of my favorite anime, my top 100 in order. And really thinking about it, I would say this is my number 4. My 4th favorite anime of all time. Which means that is just slightly better than Spice and Wolf. But just slightly under Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. And I think this is the perfect spot. Because it's in what I refer to as my Hall of Fame set. The animes that I think are just leagues above everything else. But at the same time, it's not at the very top. It does have a couple things that could be better. Like, as I said, it could have focused a little more on Inuyashiki himself. There could have been a few things that were explained a little better. Like the fact that we never got an explanation for how they got the powers. I mean, we know that, obviously, aliens gave it to them. That both Inuyashiki and Hiro were rebuilt by alien technology and all. But we never got an explanation for it. And in the end, while it wasn't important, it could have added a lot more to it. Plus, we don't know exactly the full limits of their powers. We know that they couldn't stop a full asteroid on their own, and that the only way to do so was to have both of them self-destruct. But otherwise, like, we don't know the full limits. They could bring back the dead. I mean, that's huge. There's a lot we didn't know. There's a lot that wasn't necessarily answered in the end. Like, with Inuyashiki's son, we never really had a full resolution with him. And it kind of implied that he started to he started to see things a little more clearly. But even so, it didn't, like, give a big, full, like, character arc in a way to him in the same way it did with Mari. So he didn't have, like, this big, grand conclusion to it. We don't know how long after the events of the explosion. And sorry for that, I do have Facebook open. We don't know how long after the events of the explosion that last scene takes place, when Mari finds out that she's been published in Jump. We don't know what both of those sides, what both Hiro and Inuyashiki's loved ones are really fully up to afterwards. We saw their reactions when it happened, but that's about it. There's a lot of stuff that could have been explained a little better in the end. But that's not, again, to say it was bad by any means. It's one of my favorite anime of all time. This series was phenomenal. It did everything it needed to do. While there were some stuff that could have made it better, that doesn't mean that what it did was flawed. What it did was phenomenal. It could have done more, but it didn't necessarily need to. Is what I'm saying. And I'm going to miss it. I don't feel like 11 episodes was enough. I feel like we needed more. And again, sorry for the notification sounds. In fact, I could turn that off, actually. There, now you shouldn't be able to hear them. I feel like we did need more. At least I wanted more. There could have been more, easily. But for what it was, these 11 episodes, it was a true joy. I've mentioned it in past reactions, but this was a series that flew under my radar. When it first came out, I knew people were enjoying it, and I knew it was pretty popular. But for some reason, I just never thought to check it out. I never really gave it the time of day, and it was never really in my radar. Yeah, to repeat the same thing I basically said already. And because of it, it's just like, for so long, I kind of ignored it. And then it's like, I kept hearing about it over and over and over again since it initially came out, to the point where when I started really doing these reactions more often, I thought that would be something fun to do. And I put it on my poll, and you guys wanted to see it. You guys wanted to see me react to it. So, yeah, I'm really glad I got the chance to do this. And this isn't the first time this has happened. Because of you guys, I've seen other great shows that I've fallen in love with, that I wouldn't have seen otherwise anyways, or at least most likely wouldn't have. Star vs. the Force of Evil is a great example of that. Whack Fu is another, and so on and so forth. Last Man? This is just another one of those shows that is so freaking good. But I probably would have never seen it if not for this channel and for you guys, so thank you. So once again, there will be no reaction on Friday next week due to the fact that I'll be at Youmacon, but the week after we will be starting KO Season 2. I mean, technically we already started it when we did the Episode 1 reactions to both Inuyashiki and KO Season 2. So Episode 1 is up. If you have yet to see that, go to the video for... there's one video for both Inuyashiki and KO. So go check that out. And Episode 2 will be in 2 weeks. Maybe even more than just the second episode. I might do more than one at a time. In fact, it's probably pretty likely. In the meantime, though, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Vento Aureo, will be tomorrow. And we'll continue going normal all the way to next week, basically until Thursday. Once Thursday hits, we're pretty much not doing anything again until Monday, the Monday after. So, yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for allowing me to see a series like this. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles, shed tears along the way, you're still standing, live, love, laugh, and